You go out, you're around people, maybe you even have a good time, but somehow, when you get home, you still feel empty, lonely, like something's missing. Maybe you have friends, but you don't feel deeply connected. You're social, but it doesn't feel fulfilling. This isn't just in your head. It's how your brain is wired, specifically the battle between your limbic system and your prefrontal cortex. All of this we're going to cover in today's episode, including how to have deeper connections that you've always craved. Here we go. My name is Dr. Gregory Donahue, and this is Zen for Men. Men's mental health put into action. Real, practical change. When we think about social connection, our brain has two primary systems that handles this for us. It has the prefrontal cortex and it has the limbic system. The prefrontal cortex is the socially polite, upstanding gentleman. The prefrontal cortex is all about what's right, wrong, and appropriate. Think of it like the golden child, the person who knows how to read a room and do exactly what is expected in that societal context. The prefrontal cortex is a lot about problem solving, very logic mode. If you ever remember getting into junior high and high school, and I remember I had this specific moment, I think I was 13 or 14. I went up to my mom and I said, "Mom, I am going to do whatever it takes to become popular." In that moment, I was turning on my prefrontal cortex to try to figure out social dynamics as if it was this giant chessboard that I could strategize and figure out just how to become the most popular person. That is the prefrontal cortex at its height. It is all logic, connection, politeness, and honestly, it's needed. We need the prefrontal cortex. We would be terrible human beings if we didn't have it. Without the prefrontal cortex, we would be very similar to primal beasts. But the prefrontal cortex has a flaw. The flaw is that it is missing the chemicals and hormones that give the sensation of genuine, deep, emotional connection. That very system that we crave, when we talk about, I want to belong, everybody says, I'm just trying to fit in, but we all deeply want to belong. We know that we are wired for social connection, but it's not just good enough to be in a social group or even to be accepted by a social group. The feeling of belonging comes from an entirely different, often neglected system, especially for men. That neglected system is the limbic system. The limbic system is the emotional core. Think of it like the primal masculine center of emotions, which also includes deep bonding. Oxytocin, the love chemical, is produced within the limbic system, not the prefrontal cortex. So you can have a nice, politically correct conversation with a friend. No oxytocin gets released. It is a useful relationship, but often in not that deep depth of belonging. The limbic system is what draws from our desperate and innate need for other people. When we're younger, especially as guys, it is often promoted that we become practical, that we become very achievement-oriented. Almost all of that energy is related to a transactional relationship, that if I achieve, you'll approve of me. That's all prefrontal cortex. We're not going to feel that deep, amazing feeling of connection and belonging. Most of us end up feeling it for the first time, either with porn, when we have sex, or if there's a girlfriend who accepts us. It's very easy to sexualize or to assume that sex is the main and only way that we feel bonded or connected. That's why so many of us crave more sex and want it more. It's not because we have higher sex drives most of the time. It's because we only enter into the limbic system at the time that we're having sex or that we're sexually stimulated or intimate. When the reality is, we need to be in the limbic system and being emotional and bonded way more times and in way different ways than just sex. Sex is supposed to be the expression of connection, but it's not supposed to be the primary form of oxytocin. We're supposed to get oxytocin by being emotionally bonded and feeling safe with our significant other. You know that craving where even guys that are getting enough sex, they still crave to feel respected. They crave to be admired and desired. I can't tell you how many guys, and I felt this myself, even the guys getting enough sexual connection will still say, yeah, but I want her to want sex. It's not enough that she's giving me sex. I want her to want it. That is screaming a lack of holistic limbic system, that there needs to be more time in the overall limbic system of comfort, care, feeling the oxytocin from partner to partner. outside of just sex. I went on a little bit of a rampage about limbic system and sex, but if you find yourself as a guy mostly having a social life of small talk, professional networking, social media, you still feel lonely, it's because your limbic system isn't engaged during most of your life. You're operating most of your social engagements through the prefrontal cortex. This happens especially in modern society because our world right now is exploding with prefrontal cortex conversations. That is going to be social media, online, virtual, work meetings, casual friend groups, video games. All of those are designed for prefrontal cortex. And one of the main reasons are because it doesn't involve as much of our physical body. Most connection, when you think about back in the day, was around working together. Those of you who play sports or used to play sports can remember there's a bonding component to the body getting engaged. Most of our activities and socializing completely ignores accessing the body or physical engagement. That's one of the aspects that promotes our turn on of the limbic system. The prefrontal cortex is mostly about analytical problem solving and very appropriate. The body has the element of that primal, survival, even competitive nature. Most of our modern world is designed to accentuate prefrontal cortex communication, leaving so many people feeling devoid of limbic connection. It is all this logical connection. The other aspect of this is the performance trap or the achievement trap, where we feel like we need to offer something or be able to entertain or be successful, earn enough money in order to earn the social approval. Anytime there's something that is required of us action-wise, we have to put on a front. That is pure engagement of the strategic prefrontal cortex. And it pulls us out of the limbic system in order to strategize connection, because ultimately we have entered into a transactional relationship. Think of prefrontal cortex is always going to be transactional. Necessary, because so many of our relationships do need to be transactional, mostly our profession. But when it comes to deeper connection, like our closest friends, family members, our spouse, that needs to dive into the limbic system. But as men, we are taught to prioritize transaction-based or achievement-based connections. It's all prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is a little on the primal side, so we'll call it skittish. You ever notice when you think of a wild animal and there's that moment where you know it's considering, can I trust you? Can I not? And it takes a lot of patience. The limbic system needs safety. It needs extra caution. The limbic system, and therefore our bonding system, requires safety. So if we go into a social situation, I can't tell you how many times my wife would enter the room and I would immediately think, what does she need from me? Or she would come out and be upset about something and my mind would just turn off my limbic system, go right into prefrontal cortex of, what do I need to say to calm this situation down? What do I need to say to make her happy with me again? That's all prefrontal cortex. As opposed to when she comes in the room and I'm anxious, be like, holy crap, you scared the crap out of me. Or I am super tense right now. Are you okay? Are we okay? That is more of a limbic system expression where I am very aware of my emotional and body response to her coming in the room. That is way more limbic and allows for that deeper connection as opposed to, hey, are you okay? Is there something you need? It's very focused on the other person, which is very strategic. That's how I've lived, honestly, most of my life. And I have felt constant disconnection. About 5 years ago, my wife said something that really shocked me. She said, I get the sense that if I died or if we were to get divorced, you could move on and you wouldn't even think twice. It would just be easy for you to move on. And I was really offended by that. I was like, are you kidding me? No, I would be devastated. It would be tough. But there was a part of me that realized I am pretty comfortable being alone. I do feel fairly self-sufficient. And most of my connection was based on kind of a transaction. I did lack a deeper connection. My emotions didn't really engage. Everything was about this strategic reflecting back. I denied her saying that and said, absolutely, that's not true. I am very connected to you. I can't believe you would say that. But months into it, I did realize there was some truth to it. I did feel self-sufficient and more connected with my own ability to survive I didn't feel the level of connection that I felt I should. She was pointing out something that I didn't know how to explain, but I did know that some of it was right. This was the perfect reflection of me being in my prefrontal cortex the majority of all of my relationships. When marriage does need to be different, family members, our children, our spouses are supposed to fall into a different category. We can be prefrontal cortex with almost every other relationship. And that's how I was operating all of my relationships, was very transactional prefrontal cortex, very logical. I thought I was just going to present to be a good person. But when we want emotional depth and we need someone to have that unconditional love, we need to drop into the limbic system. And I was completely unfamiliar with how to do that. The main reason was because I didn't feel safe most of the time. I had it in my head that if I allowed for darker parts or depressed parts or anxious parts to come out, I would not be accepted. Because of that belief, I did not feel safe sharing those genuine limbic system level emotions. I shoved down the limbic system and forced myself into prefrontal cortex because I was afraid that my limbic system was rejectable, made me weak, made me unpredictable, undesirable. So I hid it. But therefore, I was keeping myself from ever feeling real connection. My wife had a version of me that was only half the truth because I was holding back a lot of deeper emotions and thoughts. As I've been able to build a little more safety with my wife, I had to push myself past my normal safety zone. But as I've done that, my ability to drop that mask and just live in the moment of that emotion, no more scripts, no more mask. I can just share what I'm feeling. It is unbelievably relieving to not have to have a strategy or a script, but just to be honest and open. I cannot describe to you the relief of having nothing suppressed and nothing hidden. It's why I'm making this video today, in hopes that a little bit of this freedom can be transmitted. Once we drop the mask and drop out of prefrontal cortex into the limbic system with our spouse, it does have that feeling of connection and bonding that I had been looking for a long time. So let's talk about practical ways to rewire the brain for deep connection and to get into the limbic connection, the limbic system, more often. An important thing to ask myself throughout this entire process, did I feel seen during that? Do I feel heard and understood? The limbic system is that core emotional part of us. So if I go in and I'm trying to do for the other people and strategize for them, there's often where I turn off my awareness to my emotions and my needs and focus on them. That's a dead giveaway that I am pretty heavily in prefrontal cortex. So a good question to ask myself is, did I feel seen and heard in that conversation? Because if the answer is no, that means I haven't yet entered into limbic system. The next thing to look out for is limbic moments. Throughout our lives, we're going to have moments where we drop the shell, we drop the mask, and we feel more vulnerable. That's either going to be around specific people, under specific contexts. There are going to be some times when we do talk more and we do open up more. Take note of every one of those limbic moments where you drop the walls just for a moment, or it feels easier to go in that and start tracking. What made that happen? Was there a certain demeanor or characteristic of the person I was talking to? Was it one-on-one instead of a group? Was it because we were holding hands? And I will tell you, for my wife and I, while we're walking, and especially while we're making physical contact, huge for limbic system conversations, for actual bonding conversations. A lot of people talk about skin time or holding time. Hugely beneficial for reinforcing the limbic system instead of just prefrontal cortex conversations. I can be honest with you with distractions, or if I need to be doing something, or if I have a meeting coming up, my prefrontal cortex is going to be on. So I need to set up the environment so that I can actually focus on the limbic system. Like I said, the limbic system is skittish. So it's important to protect the context of the limbic system where there's safety, so that your prefrontal cortex doesn't come on at a moment's notice because there was an interruption or because you knew you were about to have to jump into another context. Your emotions weren't really all in it. Make sure that you can be emotionally present. That's been huge for me, is protecting the context of limbic conversations. But map out your limbic moments. Whenever that's come up for you in any context with any person, track those moments, write them down, and see if you can increase those settings or those environments more often. Lastly, there's a shift of priority between Am I doing performance for them? Or how important do I feel my feelings are around them? If I don't feel good around that person, do I make that important? So if you want to emphasize the limbic system, one of the things I had to do was turn up the volume on my own feelings. Do I like this person? Do I not? Do I enjoy this? I had to start questioning everything. Do I like this food? Do I not? Do I like this temperature? Do I not? Colors, my work environment, everything that I was doing, I started to question with that lens of turning up the volume on my limbic awareness and saying, do I like this? Is this even enjoyable for me? That type of questioning became more important than, do they like me? Are they okay with me? Are they upset with me? I tried to redirect my brain out of prefrontal cortex as often as I can and said, what about me? Do I actually get what I need to out of this? It's a tough switch, but it's important to combine both. Loneliness is not just about being alone. It's about lacking the deep connections that comes from our limbic system, our emotional primal core, and we're living too much in our prefrontal cortex. So much of our social life needs to be in prefrontal cortex, but it needs to be the exception, not the rule. The fix isn't to socialize more. It's not to get out. It's not to be around more people. It's to learn how to have the deeper connections. And a lot of us, the solution is not to see more people. It's actually to see fewer, but the right people. Seeing the right people can open up that context for us. So ask yourself, when was the last time you had a truly deep conversation? What was your last limbic moment? Leave it in the comments below, and maybe someone can relate to what you're talking about. If you have a way to access your limbic system or access that emotional state and ride out that balance between prefrontal cortex and limbic, please comment. So many guys are needing ideas, and what you say could make a big difference to another guy who needs to hear that exact thing. If this content has been helpful for you, please subscribe, leave a comment. Any interaction makes a big difference for this algorithm because the idea is to get more emotional intelligence and emotional well-being to men that need it. We'll see you in the next video.